Welcome to another edition of Filmnut. I am your host, Jeff Schubert. Glad you can join us. Roller Derby is back, and now it's going to be hitting the big screen on October 2nd as Drew Barrymore makes her directing debut in the film Whip It. My guest tonight, Zoe Bell, co-stars in the movie as Bloody Holly, a character name befitting of Miss Zoe Bell. Prior to Whip It, Bell starred in Quentin Tarantino's Death Proof and the online series Angel of Death, which has just recently been released on DVD. In addition to acting, Bell is a two-time Taurus Award winner for her stunt work, doubling Uma Thurman in Kill Bill Volume 2. Obviously, she was doubling her in 1 as well. Other stunt credits include Inglourious Bastards, Bitch Slap, where she served as the stunt coordinator, Death Proof, 27 Dresses, and of course for Lucy Lawless in Xena Warrior Princess. Here she is, the tough, the talented, the beautiful Zoe Bell.
Thank you for such an awesome intro.
Thank you for being here tonight. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Big fan of much of your work, so it really is a pleasure having you on.
Thanks.
So let's start with the most recent first, Whip It. How did you get involved in that project, and who do you play?
I play a character called Bloody Holly. Well, that's in fact my derby name.
Your derby name, right.
Yeah, you know, which is, it's the most important name, I think. When your name's Bloody Holly, you've got to take advantage of that.
That's right.
And that came about, a dear friend of mine who was acting as my manager at the time, Brent Carlson, had set me up on a meeting, a general meeting for the casting agents of it way earlier, and I'd walked in and I was wearing high-heeled boots and tight jeans, and I was doing my whole, like, look hot if I can kind of deal. And one of the girls that was casting it was, talking about being in shape and this and that. And she looked at me and she was like, "You've got a great physique. We're doing this roller derby movie, blah, blah." And I was like, "Roller derby? That sounds excellent." And Quentin had kind of been on this whole roller derby mission when we were shooting in Austin. And so it just seemed to kind of pop up in a bunch of different places where I was just like, we're going to have to make this happen. And it just sort of...
Now, didn't Drew Barrymore tell you you were in the movie before you knew you were in the movie?
Yeah, it was a little bit like, well, I mean, there'd been back and forth, but I was unclear as to whether it had been cemented or not. And I went to a roller derby match and met Drew and Ellen. And basically when I met Drew, she was like, "Ah!" Jumped on me and gave me a big hug. She was like, "I'm so excited you're part of the team. I can't wait to start shooting." And I was like, "This is good. Okay, I'll take your word for it. I'm happy to oblige. I'm happy to be in part of the team too." So that was, yeah, a really pleasant surprise.
No, great cast. In addition to you and Drew, we have Juliette Lewis. Ellen Page is starring.
Yeah.
So what's it about? And tell me a little bit more about Bloody Holly.
Well, Ellen Page plays the role of Bliss, who is a young girl who's grown up in Bodine, Texas, in the land of beauty pageants and barbecue sandwiches and so forth, and never quite fits in, and discovers the world of roller derby, and basically finds herself there, and then has to figure out how to balance who she is with where she comes from, and the world that she finds that makes sense to her is the world of roller derby, and that's where we come in. We the Hurl Scouts, we're the team that she ends up playing for. Bloody Holly is a medical aide by day, so she rolls around in scrubs and helps people, and then as derby goddess by night. That's often the play that we touched on a lot, was that you go to real roller derby matches and these girls are all in fishnets and they're tattered and they're tackling people, and then by night they're school teachers and they or they're caretakers, or they what I mean. It's
right.
Sort of like, it seems ironic, but it's part of the beauty of it, I think, that it's so fun.
And your character, you're tough, or you're the villain, or you're nice?
No, my character's, so she's a caretaker by day. She looks after people, and that's sort of what she does. And then by night, she smashes people. But she's also, she's sort of a bit of a glamour puss. She's punk rock, she's covered in tats and so on and so forth. And a lot of it's all tits and fishnets. Right. But she's very sort of coiffed, and she's always sort of made up, and her hair's always cute. She's always got like dresses and boots on, and just me playing outside of myself a little bit. But I still have my New Zealand accent because Drew, we were going to go with Texan, and I was really excited about it because the Texan drawl is just fun, and Drew loved my accent, and we'd agreed on it. And then a couple of days before shoot, she kind of timidly walked up to me and she was a little bit like, "I don't think you're going to be very happy with me, but we've all decided that your New Zealand accent's really cute and we want you to keep it." And I was like, I mean, thank you for calling me cute, but fine, So yeah, she's a New Zealand punk glamour puss roller derby girl.
Sounds good. We have a little bit of the trailer from it, so let's take a look at that and then get to some instant messages from viewers.
I'm gonna change my work schedule because I want to take an SAT class on Tuesdays, Thursdays. I'm impressed.
I like smart girls. That's why I married your mama. Well, that and I knocked her up.
I'ma do the things that I want.
Looking good, Barbie.
I ain't got a thing to.
You can make out with him, but that is it. Has anyone ever thrown up on the track before?
Yeah.
Get ready to meet your newest Girl Scout, Babe Ruthless!
This is your SAT class?
I am in love with this.
I cannot take losing the chance for our kid to be happy.
We're number two. We're number two.
She came in second out of 2 teams. That's right, celebrate mediocrity. That's fantastic.
Celebrating mediocrity, that's fun.
You know, it's all about the fact that you don't actually have to be just the winner as long as you feel good about it and you're challenging yourself. That's the idea. I literally just got goosebumps watching that trailer. I'm a little embarrassed to say it, but it happened.
Wonderful. That's good.
Yeah.
Bottom would like to ask you, or say, stunt people are the real unsung heroes of action films. Are there any individuals whose work you admired growing up?
I'm assuming you mean in terms of stunt people.
Mm-hmm.
I wish I had a good answer for that. I mean, the truth is, I really didn't know that stunt people existed. I didn't know it was a career that was a possibility. You know, I was always fascinated by Evel Knievel, and I mean, as I actually became someone, I less and less wanted to be like Evel Knievel because it just seemed a little bit like I might die doing that. But you know, I was sort of inspired by gymnasts growing up, like Olympians, and I would watch the Commonwealth Games, and that sort of stuff was, I guess, the closest thing to what I could understand as being a reality of what people can do with their bodies. And so yeah, that was pretty. I used to love watching gymnastics. That was sort of.
Do you like watching things like the X Games now and stuff like
Yeah.
that? Yeah.
Yeah. If I'm flicking through, you know, and especially when they do, there's something about. I mean, slow-mo just looks cool anyway, but when you see people doing feats like that, even if you just watch someone doing an ollie on a skateboard in slow-mo, it's fascinating to watch how all the different parts of your body maneuver and how much training it takes for that to become instinctive. And I mean, I guess I do that stuff. I just don't usually look at my ankles in slow-mo.
Right. Now, so I mentioned in the top, this is Drew Barrymore's directorial debut.
Mm-hmm.
She seems to be such a passionate person who creates such a great energy around her and the people she's with, teams, that sort of thing. How is she as a director? What environment did she create? And how did she work with you specifically?
She's amazing. I mean, you know, as an individual, she's really warm and emotionally generous and giving, and she's the same as a director. She's very clear visions for what she wants, which is, you know, you need that in a director. It's awesome, but she's got a very gentle way of dealing with you, and she's very intimate and very one-on-one. You know, again, I think something that she and Quentin both share that I see as being a really important skill is choosing the people in relation to each other. So it's not just like cast that person. There's a sense of she's building a team, you know, and the cast on the show. I mean, I'm honoured to be considered cast on the show with the other women that were in it, and I think a lot of the women that came on board for this came on board because of the way Drew approached us, you know, and it's, and, you know, and with me, she was very much, she very much just treated me like I was an actor, you know, which I know sounds silly because I am, but it, you know, it's taken me a little while to get my head around that, and it takes for someone like Drew to do me the honor of being like, this is what I expect from you, this is what I want, this is how we're going to do it. And she was really fun and wanted to engage in my toughness, and she would throw things at me and we would banter, and it's a lot of fun. And she's pretty inspirational, you know what I mean? She's awesome to be able to call her my friend.
Just to kind of sew that up, so Quentin and Drew not relying on formulas, but specifically looking for the right fit, chemistry, people with the right talent for the right role. Is that kind of what you were saying?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I didn't really ask Drew if she did that, and
that's your perception.
Yeah, and you know, Quentin talked to me about it because he was very aware of casting people around me, which was, you know, good for me and for him, seeing as he was the one casting me in the first place. But yeah, they both seem to, and it's clear when you're on set and you see it on the screen and you can feel it in the way that the crew maneuvers and the cast, you know, it's really fluid and positive. There's just a lot of positive energy there. I think everyone feeds off it. It's awesome.
Like a dance.
Just like a dance, yeah.
Argo would like to ask, it sounds like a horse's name. Hey,
Sounds vaguely familiar.
Vaguely familiar. Hey Zoe, now that you've stunt doubled on some pretty high octane projects, acted in front of the camera, and now have been the stunt coordinator on Bitch Slap, what do you enjoy the most? It's been fun watching your career develop.
You guys rule. Thank you, Argo. Like, that's weird. It's been a long time since I've used that name, and it wasn't talking to a camera at that point. Yeah, I've been really fortunate with all the stuff that I've done, and I've actually really enjoyed doing all of it, you know, which is, you know, there's been moments where I'm a little bit like, wow, I think I'm going to have to make a choice at some point, but I've been really fortunate, and it's hard for me to say that I like one more than the other. I mean, you know, the joy of coordinating and acting is, it's like there's a newness to it, and there's a new fear and challenge, and so I'm finding that very refreshing and revitalizing, so, but it's hard for me to say that I like it better than stunts, you know. It's, the joy is both of those things, particularly the acting at this point, totally incorporate what I did as a stunt woman, and it's just sort of adding to that, so.
Well, certainly in Angel of Death and Death Proof, you had an opportunity to combine them, right?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely, and you know, I'm really fortunate with both of those projects that were sort of written specifically for me, so the action side of it got to be really generous, because I think often, you know, I know even as a stunt double you do all this incredible work and everyone works so hard to get these amazing sequences, and then they get instantly depleted in the editing room. It's the first thing to go, you know. But when you've got someone like Quentin saying, this is what I want my movie to be about, and I want it to be based around this woman whose strengths are this, then you really get to play with it and you get to keep a lot of that. And it was the same with Angel of Death, so I've been really fortunate. Like, that would be awesome if I could just keep having that happen.
Now, viewers can still see Angel of Death at the crackle.com website, is that correct?
You know, I so should have thought about that before I came on. I know they were talking about having it back online. I don't know if it is.
No. I saw it there a couple of days ago.
Oh, there you go. You absolutely can. Crackle.com. Go there and see Angel of Death.
With the DVD, you get all sorts of extras and commentary that are fantastic, but if you still want to see, it's a great series. So you mentioned the word fear. I want to touch on that. To be a stunt person, is it safe to assume that you have to be fearless?
Definitely, and you know, in normal people terms, yes. Right. No offense.
In acting, you kind of have to be emotionally fearless. So how are you finding that? I know in your Angel of Death commentary, you talked about anger being difficult for you to express, and how you had to put in the hard yards, I think is what you said, you know, to get there. What were the hard yards? How you?
Well, what's interesting is, you know, for someone who's physical like myself, hard yards is often, you know, hours of training, or it's going for running, or it's beating up people, or it's, you know, in Angel of Death, it was more, the hard yards for me were, you know, breaking this character apart, developing a character, giving her a history, figuring out, you know, all of that, and then figuring out how I could get in touch with those parts of me that, you know, because we all have these parts. I've just spent many, many years working in such a way as to sort of either disguise them or just to not have them be shown, on, particularly at work, you know, and so crying and yeah, being angry was...
I would have thought that would have been the easy one.
Right? I know, you'd think so. Yeah. It's like the crying one was the one that I was most like, how do you do that? Like, I've spent so many years like being in chronic pain at times and not crying for that, for the opposite sets of reasons, you know, but the anger one was the one that I found most terrifying, was to lose my temper at someone. Clearly I'm not actually losing my temper because, you know, but to engage in having a temper and the fear of what that might do to the other people, or the effect I might have, and being able to let that go. It's been, it's actually been quite cathartic, you know?
Yeah.
All those times my little brother, no, I'm kidding. Sorry, joking, I'm so joking.
Well, to add on that, Bottom has a question that kind of goes along what we're talking about. You seem pretty fearless. Do you have any phobias?
By the way, Bottom is the coolest name ever. If I ever have a child, I might just call him Bottom.
Bottom Bell, there you go.
Bottom Bell. Well, now you say it like that. Bottom Bella. Anyway, yes, I have. I don't know if I want to tell everybody this, but I have a random phobia of praying mantises. Now, it's not a phobia like I actually think they're going to kill me. It's just they kind of give me the heebie-jeebies. most insects don't, but I had an experience with a praying mantis one time where I swear I was doing this. I was playing with him. I was like, doo-doo-doo-doo, and he was eyeballing me. And at one point, I was like convinced he was plotting how to bite my nose off or something, and I freaked out, and he wouldn't get off my hand. And ever since then, I've been a bit creeped out. Next.
We got the phobias taken care of. So it sounds like, and your director on Angel of Death, whose name is escaping me for the moment. Paul Etheridge, right? Mm-hmm. He was commenting on how you attack roles, and you were talking before, you break it down, the character, the research. So is that how you've kind of dealt with your fear and the emotional aspect by going to work, doing your homework?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me originally it was a little bit like, you know, you get someone like Quentin who's 100% behind you, and his advice to me was to not take acting classes because he knew exactly what he wanted from me, and he knew it was there, and whether I had confidence or not, he had it in abundance, you know, which he does. And so there was an element that I was like, with Angel of Death, I suddenly was like, wow, I really have to, not only do I have to earn this role, but if I'm going to give my word to these people, the director and the producers and the writer, you know, Ed, who's writing this thing for me, you know, for myself, I don't want to half-ass it, but like, I owe it to these people to really commit, and that meant letting go of the possibility of failing, which sounds kind of ironic, and I guess we've all had that experience at some point in time, but that was like the hard yards for me, was like the commitment to it and the making it happen. And yeah, once I realized that it was all about preparation and this and that, then it became relatable to the experience I'd already had career-wise, you know, so it's very different, but it was a similar formula that I could grapple with. You
can give it a structure, and that kind of helped. I tell you, I'm really glad you brought up what Quentin said to you about not taking acting classes for Death Proof. And by the way, for non-Xena fans, Argo is the name of Xena's horse. That's where that comes from.
Right, good point, yeah.
So I'm really glad you brought that up, because I'm doing research on you, and early on I came across that bit of information that Quentin told you not to take acting classes. And I was like, huh, okay. And then as I got to...
You were like, huh, okay. I was like, really? Is that, okay.
When I got to know you a little bit better through watching, you know, Double Dare, this amazing documentary about you that people should watch about stunt work and everything, it made perfect sense, because he wrote a character around you, and for that role that close to it, it made perfect sense. And in Double Dare, when you see Zoe audition for Kill Bill, and you see how much joy she was having, this big audition in her life, and how she was screwing up, and it wasn't going as well for her as she had hoped.
I don't know if I'd say screwing up. No, I was definitely screwing up. I was like falling over. It's screwing up.
And you were having so much, you were getting mad at yourself, but yet having fun at the same time. That kind of joy that you brought to it, I'm like, yes, for that, with that personality, and for Death Proof, obviously he knew what he was doing, and he knows you 100 times better than me.
Right.
It worked out well.
Yeah, that was definitely sort of that was his take on it. I mean, he was absolutely like, I don't want you to taint it, you know, and so there was a while there where I was like, well, do I take acting lessons? Maybe I just be me and everything. And it's like, well, there's always going to be an element of me in it, but, you know, it's like it's either an art form or it's a discipline, you know, like I kind of feel like, I seem to treat it more like a discipline because that's my background, but I've taken a bunch of acting classes since then. I'm doing improv, and I'm doing audition classes, I'm doing voice, you know, all these different things. It's like upskilling the same way I might do martial arts, or I would do high diving, or I would do surfing, or, you know, and with that comes the ability to utilize skills. Like basically I relied on Quentin for everything on that movie. I was sort of like, listen, you tell me what to do and I'll do it, you know, and I'm really good at taking instruction. That comes with my history as well. And Quentin and I have worked so closely together, we speak the same language. Then when you move on from that, it's a little bit like, okay, well, when I don't have Quentin, or I'm playing a role that's outside of myself, aka an assassin, because as far as I know, I've never killed anybody, at least not intentionally, you know, in my life. So.
Well, you did go on that joyride in Death Proof where you killed the guy at the end.
I'm right, but I mean, like, okay, so yes, I did in that show as well. Okay, so maybe I've killed the odd person, but, you know, I mean, in Angel of Death, the character is certainly not me. At that point, there's like a skill set that's important. So if I'm not feeling angry, if I'm not feeling terrified, then I need to have tools and how to engage in that, you know, and that's exciting for me. It's tangible. It's something I can...
No, absolutely. I mean, if you wanted to be a one-off, fine, but I think it was perfect for Death Proof, but to grow and do more, absolutely. It's
and I don't think Quentin was ever saying, you should never study. You know, clearly, he's a smarter man than that. Sure. And but I think he was very specific about Death Proof, and he was right.
Absolutely,
course, clearly.
Yeah. Zico would like to ask. These questions are being timed perfectly. The questioners are doing a great job.
People.
Ryan, you're doing a great job. Unbelievable. Zico would like to ask, how much Zoe is in the Zoe from Grindhouse Death Proof? Your role was in was an improvisation of your own style and text, or they gave you a script? Do you think that computer animations are a threat to your occupation or better safety? Two completely different questions. so let's stick with one.
Watch me multitask.
So the one question is, how much Zoe is Zoe from Grindhouse, and how much was your role improvised, or was it all scripted? Or?
Was it Z-Girl?
The question was Zico.
Zico, okay.
Yes.
I was like,
I believe
I get
Zico
called
is
Z-Girl.
from Poland, if I remember correctly.
Sounds vaguely Polish. Basically, that's a Quentinized version of myself. It was all verbatim scripted. Aside from when we're in the car, and when I'm on the car crying and being scared, there was, a certain amount of ad lib on that, because that whole sequence was sort of like, it just was birthed as it was birthing. You know what I mean?
When you said you were scared, I'm like, she's acting. She's not scared.
That was acting, total acting. But like all, the coffee table and all the pieces leading up to that, all the big dialogue-y pieces were not an ounce of improv. Like, Quentin just writes the way he writes, and it reads like improv, because, and it's the same thing, like, he cast us girls to be a team, and so we actually and in real life we banter very similar to that. Right. Only we're not reading from a script. I mean, when we did that the
sex on the set, that stuff, that's what you guys are talking about.
I've never talked about such things in my life. But no, when we're sitting around the breakfast table and there's that one shot, we did that, I can't remember how many takes we did, but 7 takes or something like that. And in one shot at the, in between takes, he was like, so Zoe, this time I want you to play it like you're really tired, like you just got off the plane, and I want you to switch this word. Instead of having it be at, I want it to be in, or whatever it was. Right. And that's it. Like, that's how specific it was. Right. Yeah, and I mean, it's a kudos to him that the amount of people that asked me if we were just ad-libbing. It's like, no, he wrote that. Like,
there was even like 1 or 2, it sounded like New Zealand colloquialisms that were in there.
Oh, yeah.
Were those his too?
All of the mates, everything scripted.
Very nice.
Everything scripted.
Now, how likely is the real Zoe to call up one of her stunt buddies on the weekend and say, hey, let's do some death-defying stunt where I like hang out on a car? Do you and your stunt pals do stuff like that for fun? Or?
Yeah, but I mean, I can't say I've ever, done ship's mast before. Right. And it's ironic, because I actually was about to say, no, I'm usually not that much of it, but I literally can't walk up and down stairs today, because me and about 3 or 4 girlfriends were in Pismo doing ATVing and jumping sand dunes and stuff. So I guess I do kind of do random car stuff on the weekends. But yeah, I mean, a lot of the stunt people I know take great joy in being able to afford the time and whatever to be able to go surfing for the weekend, or, go dirt biking or whatever it is. I really like that there are people in my life that do that stuff. I can be like, what are you doing this weekend? They're like, dirt biking. I'm like, can I come? So yeah, we do. I would rather not risk my life, but
Now, one last death-proof stunt I got to bring up. It looked like you one-up the Duke boys. You jumped right in through the window of your car. I was like, how cool is that? How many takes was that? Or
there was 2, and I so love that you bring that up, because there was such a moment of joy, the whole crew and cars, because I was like trying to figure out how many steps, because it's all that big one shot. I'm chasing the car and I'm this and that, and I throw the pole and run and jump, and I was like, I know he's completely confident that I can do this, but I'm like, I'd literally never done that before. It's just like one of those random things that in my entire career, for whatever reason, probably because there was maybe one episode of Xena that actually had a car on it, and I just got hit by it instead. But so I was like, oh my god! And the first time I did it, I threw the pipe in, and the pipe got in the way a little bit, and I caught a foot. And Quentin was like, "That was pretty cool," and I was like, "Yeah, pretty cool, just not." Because when Quentin loves something, angels sing. You know what I mean? Like, Quentin's like, "That was," and by the way, beep 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 is often what follows. There's like everything radiates, and you're so proud to have made him so proud. And I was like, so fine is not, pretty cool is not good enough. And the second time, the teamwork was Rosario had figured it out. She was like, the minute I threw the pole through the window, she moved it out of the way. And yeah, I just sort of like, I didn't feel myself touch anything. I literally was in the seat and I was like, drive, that worked, that was awesome, let's go,
Yeah.
And afterwards, the whole crew was like, dude.
Yeah, I mean, for people who didn't see the movie, it's like you jump, you don't touch anything, you just jump and into your seat. I mean,
I know, if I wasn't so shocked by it, I'd be acting way cooler about it. I'd be like, whatever, I do that all the time. But I was like, I'm so glad there was cameras rolling on that. I want to see that in close-up, All
right, I got to stop being selfish here. Xena's girl would like to ask you, what did they mean in Double Dare about stunt people not being allowed to legally complain on set? Was that like a joke?
I don't even remember that part. I mean, legally complain? I'm not sure. I don't actually remember that exact quote, but stunt people are not. It's not legally. It's like an unspoken.
Unspoken kind of thing.
Yeah. You know, it goes to the whole.
They're not taking
not
you away
crying
in cuffs if.
No, yeah, you're not like hauled off to stunt jail or anything like that. And stunt jail would be an interesting place, I think, as a reality TV show.
I'm not sure what you're talking about, but I do remember one point where I think someone asked you if you were okay, and you said fine, and it looked like it was like a token question, like he didn't want it, like you were going to say fine whether you were fine or not.
Like it's rhetorical.
Right, exactly. It was like
you're fine, aren't you?
Right.
Yes.
It's like you ask because you have to, but it's kind of like a football player's mentality where.
Yeah, I mean, basically what it is are you going to die? So unless the answer is yes, I'm going to die, then you're fine, you know. And it's sort of a and it's one of the things I struggle with a little bit. Like I have to make a conscious decision about it as an actor. Is when I need to take time, you know, to get emotionally ready for something, I need to be able to ask for the time. And as a stunt person, no one should ever be waiting for me. Like if we're waiting on Zoe, then I'm mortified, you know. And I was doing another interview the other day, and they were asking me about the differences, and I was like, well, there's the differences, like, you know, I spent my career not crying, and then suddenly I'm kind of have to cry, and now they invite me to set. Whereas as a stunt person, you should already be there. It's the same sort of thing. It's like you should never be waiting, even if you're bleeding. It's like get a plaster on it and let's go. Sorry, Band-Aid for American audiences. And so that's sort of the unspoken rule of.
But isn't there a point though? Like, would you advise stunt people to, like, at what point do you have to kind of like check yourself? Because like on Xena, you broke your spine, didn't know it until, and then there was like the breakaway chair thing, and that's when you collapsed, kind of.
You've done amazing research. I'm so impressed. Yeah, I apparently fractured one of my vertebrae, and I knew about it, but I was just stubborn and young enough that I still thought I was invincible, and came back to work and had a chair broken over my back, and
it was a breakable chair, so
it
it
was like balsa wood that
yeah.
had been. Normally you wouldn't even feel it, and I had a back pad, and it dropped me like a sack of potatoes. And my director, who's also a dear friend of mine, was like, "You need to go home, and I don't want to see you again until you're well, because you're no good to me broken." And those words rang in my head. I was like, wow, because my whole thing was, it's all just self-important crap, really, where I was like, well, they can't do it without me, and I need to be there, and blah, blah. And it's like, well, do you know what? We'll make do. There are other people that can do this stuff, and you're no good to us at all broken. And so there was a really defined lesson for me learned quite early on, thank God, in the piece with that. But it is that thing. It's like, that's what I mean, is like, if you're going to die or it's an absolute no-go, then you need to speak up for the good of the production. But unless it's that extreme, then you need to shut up and buck up and for the good of the production. So it's a fine line. And it takes balls to say no. It's like, it takes more balls to say I'm not comfortable doing that than actually completing the stunt sometimes, you know.
Well, I spoke, a past guest of Filmnut was Keith Adams, your stunt coordinator on Kill Bill, and I'm kind of paraphrasing, but he was talking about how incredibly tough and talented, how there's no one like you, how the work for just a year, the training that you guys went through was just amazing, and you never complained, and you never said you were hurt, even though you were, obviously, and he just said you did an incredible job.
Oh, thanks, Keith.
Rowdy Proddy Piper would like to ask, fact, there are more sheep in New Zealand than there are people, true or false?
Absolute fact. In fact, well, I can't quote this as a fact because I'm not 100% sure. I haven't done a recent census, but I think it's something like 4 sheep per capita. And we don't all have 4 pet sheep, clearly, but, you know, like, I think that's what it works out at being. Okay,
now, the whole don't accuse someone from New Zealand as being from Australia from Death Proof, how is that? Is that fact or fiction?
You know, it's fact for a lot of people. For me, to be honest, for me, it so doesn't bother me personally. You know, I've Canadianed a mistake for an American. Wait a minute, I've mistaken a Canadian for an American before, and you know, I get British all the time. I get South African all the time. I definitely get asked if I'm Australian. The only time I find it offensive is if I tell them I'm from New Zealand and they repeatedly ask me what Australia is like, because at that point, just you're clearly not listening. You know what I mean? It's not about whether you're accusing me of being Australian or not. You're just not listening to what I'm saying. So, but there's definitely a lot of that. There's definitely sort of, you know, there's friendly rivalry and then there's less friendly rivalry, and we'd like to play on it though because it makes Americans uncomfortable.
Timer would like to ask, what is the most intense stunt you have ever performed?
There's been a couple of those, like, you know, in terms of physically and mentally intense for me, definitely Catwoman, the high fall was one of them, just because it was a really long way up. and the airbag was really far away, and you know, and I had to unravel a couple of times. So there's moving wires, and you know.
Nominated for a Taurus for the work in Catwoman.
Yep. Nominated. Oh, by the way, I think I have 3 Taurus awards. I'm 1 away from making an awesome table.
I'm gonna call IMDb and tell them you made me look bad on my show.
Seriously, let's fire those guys. Yeah. But so that was definitely one of the most intense. The Death Proof sequence, the car sequence, because it was so intense and it was so, you know, we shot for a long time, and being both sides of the character just made it that much fuller of an experience in terms of the performance. And you know, one of the more intense moments I remember in Xena, there's so many it's hard for me to differentiate, but like one of my first days on set when I first had to flip, and for those who watch Xena, I don't need to explain this, but flip from a castle.
From a castle?
From a castle. Yeah. Like 3 stories up, I had to flip from a castle and, you know, land amongst a whole bunch of dudes. And, you know, back in the day, we have slightly different technology now, but in New Zealand and with the budget, you know, there was basically me on the end of one string. Right. It's a rope, but, you know, bear with me. Up to a big cherry picker, and down on the other end, there's like 6 big stunt guys. They're like, okay, ready, and jump, Zoe, and they just ran, you know, I'm like, ah, you know. And also I was Xena for the first time, and I felt like if I screwed it up, then the whole show was doomed, you know.
I'm glad you gave a little bit more detail, because if you said the episode of Xena where I had a flip.
Right, that one episode where I flipped, it was highly entertaining, yeah. Or I beat up those 5 guys, that episode.
That episode. Back to Whip It, were there any intense stunts on that? Had you rollerbladed prior to this movie? Did you have to learn it?
I'd done a little bit of ice skating when I was younger before I started doing gymnastics and loved it. You know, I got given a pair of roller skates when I was a kid in Waiheke, New Zealand, which, you know, our entire property was grass and the only other road we had was untar-sealed, so I don't know what I did with the roller skates, but I've done a little bit of rollerblading. There's a lot of my friends that might punch me in New Zealand for telling them I rollerblade, but, you know, when you live in Venice Beach, you kind of play the game a little bit. But, you know, first time I got on roller skates, it probably would have been similar to the Kill Bill audition, where I just ate it repeatedly. You know, 4 wheels, no heel stop, I was just like on my butt the whole time. And loving it, because it's not often that I get to feel that uncoordinated, you know. But wait, what was the beginning of that question?
Intense stunts on Whip It, and
oh yeah,
and what you guys doing?
Yeah. So I didn't have a skate double, so I was like, right, I've got to start training so that I'm at least capable of looking like I might be able to skate. And you know, and then my character's meant to have been someone who's trained for the Olympics, you know, so she's meant to be able to do stuff that I've probably never even seen before. And so I practiced a lot, but there was one scene in there where I had to do a gag. I had to go sideways and spin around backwards and keep going, and for some reason I just couldn't get it, and I keep screwing it up and screwing it up and screwing it up, and on one of them I ate it so hard, I mean, I rang my bell, like everyone was, you know, and the live crowd's all there, and I got it this one time, and the whole crowd was just like, wow! You know, it works great for the movie, but it was such a buzz that was like, because I was really, that was like me as a stunt woman again, like trying to nail this thing that just wasn't working, you know, and to have the whole live crowd was
That's
like...
That's awesome, yeah.
I was like, this is what it must be like to win the Olympics.
That's right. There you go, a little experience there.
Yeah.
Derek would like to ask, when you were making Angel of Death, a web-based feature, how did it differ from your film work?
Well, you know, we shot Angel of Death as a web series, so... although I always treated it like a film because that's my experience, and I read it as a film and I saw it as a whole. You know, being web-based, it meant that the budget was tighter.
But for a web series, it wasn't bad, right?
No, it was pretty good for a web series,
you're
right? But my experience, having never played in the web series genre world before, it was a really tight budget, which, you know, aside from the fact that it meant there were Twizzlers instead of, you know, like endless sandwiches on the AT table, didn't really affect me except for the time. You know, we had such a short amount of time for everything, the action, the acting, the emotional scenes, the lighting, so everything was, you know, and you know what it felt like to me a little bit? It was like shooting Xena. It was like being on the TV show again where it's like, right, we've got a day, and we need to shoot this episode, let's go. You know, I'm like, wow, after being on films for so long where it would almost get to the point where I was like, I'm so bored, you know, like, come on, put me to work. Yes, that background shot looks gorgeous. Can we get to the action, please? You know, like,
Don't got a wall I can put my head through, something.
Yeah, exactly.
Keep me busy.
Break a chair on my back for crying out loud. But aside from that, I very much looked at it as a film, start to finish. So I just treated it the same way. I mean, it's my work, you know?
Yeah, it's acting.
Yeah.
So I don't want to give away too many of the extras on that, but Paul, your director, was also commenting on, he's like, hey, I got Zoe Bell, we're going to do these scenes, she's acting, she's doing the stunts, it's going to be one long, fluid shot. But no, he still had to shoot a lot of the fight scenes chopped up. And as a stunt person, why was that the case?
I don't know, actually. I mean, you know, part of it's stylistic, part of it's to do with the time, you know, because, you know, to get one long, fluid thing is, with action, it's not just like dialogue, and even dialogue, you know, like the shot that, like Death Proof and Quentin type shots that all go on forever and ever, there's so many factors playing into it, you know, and particularly with these action shots, it's like, you know, maybe my kick is not a hit, and then that whole sequence you can't use because if you want to play it start to finish. Or maybe my kick's a hit, but the dude falls behind a chair where you can't see him, so then you know, like, so, and when you're on such a tight schedule, that gets really difficult to, it's basically you just shoot what you can and then you make it work because that's what you've got, you know. So I imagine that was a lot to do with it.
Absolutely. I think, yeah, that sounds right. Derek had a second part to his question that we did not get to. It was the encroachment of CGI on your work and what you do.
Well, CGI, most of the jobs that I've done have been very little CGI, which is awesome as far as I'm concerned, because it means I get to do it all. But, you know, CGI does incredible things. It enhances things. It kind of can take things to the next level. If it's done well, it just adds, you know. People often ask me if I think that that means that they're going to start CGIing all the stunts and therefore I'm going to be out of a job. I mean, I think at this point,
I don't care, I'm acting now.
Yeah, exactly, I was just about to say that. I was like, well, not anymore, they're going to CGI this face.
You know, exactly.
Okay. But, but
I never heard okay in a New Zealand accent before, that's awesome.
Yeah, right. But I don't think it's at that place yet where audiences are completely fooled by it. Like if you're meant to be portraying something that's solidly human, there's still lots of spaces where the CGI, I mean, don't get me wrong, the technology is unbelievable, but I think there's still instinctive human traits that you instinctively watch or pick up on. And, you know, like the Death Proof sequence, like, obviously the sequence is awesome, you know, but the effect it has on people is very specific and very true. Like when I see people that are affected by it and they talk to me about it, they're like, really affected, not just like, that was cool, they're like, I was terrified, that, you know. And I think it's because whether they know it or not, on a very subconscious level, they know they're watching the same person talk and nearly die. It's not, there's no switching, there's no trick, you know, and I think that's what was so terrifying to people. And so hopefully that never goes away, because there's something pretty special about that, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. Kupchak would like to ask, if you can pick the role and pick the director to work with, what kind of role will you take, and who would be behind the lens?
Wow. I mean, I would love to work with Quentin again for like a whole bunch of different reasons.
Let me just add something to that question. What about drama, comedy? What about roles that don't involve stunts?
The whole acting thing has become really exciting to me. Yeah, it was always exciting to me, but it's become particularly real and exciting in a real way to me recently. Comedy, comedy absolutely appeals to me. And listen, comedy and action can be married very successfully, and I would love to do that as well. But you know, it's easy for people to get behind me as action actress, and I love it, and that's where my strengths lie. So there's obviously like a push for that, but I have absolutely no need to only do that. Like the concept of doing drama, you know, in Angel of Death, the drama beats were just as exciting and challenging to me as the physical pieces, and you know. There
was great comedy too. Some good comedic lines.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. And the comedy was like, the comedy is so enjoyable to me. I just started doing improv, and I'm like, this is making people laugh is really fun. You know, it's like really enjoyable. So yeah, I'm open to just about anything. Like if the character speaks some kind of truth to me, I'm interested. And in fact, if it's challenging, I'm more interested. And I mean, directors, listen. The list could go on, and you know, and the same thing. There's a lot of action directors that I would love to work with, but also just dramatic directors and loads of actors that I would love to play with, and yeah, I'm excited.
I'll tell you, just so you know, I'm not just giving you lip service. One line that you cracked me up on in Angel of Death was, you're talking to your boss, Graham, character gets a major wound, and you're asking him if the doctor says you're okay or something, when you're going to be okay, when can you work, and, and he's all like, doctor says you'll probably outlive us all, and you're like, I can outlive you right now.
Yeah. And she's not really joking. It's funny, but she's not joking.
That's why it's funny.
Yeah, exactly.
I'd be cracking up.
She's like, because it's funny, I could actually kill you, and then this would all be problematic. This would be over, you know.
That'd be cracking up. Cloworm would like to ask, are there any cool scenes of yours in Whip It that we could look out for?
All my scenes are cool.
Oh, that's right. How to pick.
Seriously.
They're all
endless.
my babies. You know?
Yeah, right. I mean, you know, this movie is not about my character. I'm definitely part of the ensemble. I'm part of the team. I'm part of what creates the derby world. And so often I'm in team scenes, and, you know, there's the odd moment that I have with Ellen where, yeah, she's sort of like our little sister that comes in, so, and I'd love to see what some of the outtakes are. If they better do an outtake, right? Because that's going to be some funny stuff on there. But yeah, no, I mean the derby stuff, and well, I mean if you're looking at the actual derby action, keep an eye out for me in the pack, because it's actually me. Clearly, I don't have a skate double, and you know, it was me practicing some of my moves. Like, they're not always highlighted in the shot, but you know, there's some stuff I was like, I learned that. You know, it took a lot of training and a lot of bum bruises, but I got it. So.
Now, the reviews for the movie I've been reading are really good. Excellent,
I know, exciting,
some excellent reviews. Do you have to know about roller derby to get the movie, or who's it for?
You don't have to know about roller derby. It's sort of explained, you know, because she's new to the game. Bliss is new to the game when she comes in, so it gets explained to her.
Ellen Page's character,
Bliss, yeah. So it gets explained to her, and thus the audience is kind of caught up with it as well. As far as who the movie's for, I mean, I think definitely young girls and young boys as well. You know, there's a really strong young male lead in there, and he's awesome. Landon's just a dude. Interesting enough, he's a real musician.
Okay.
He's a magician with the music, if you know what I'm saying.
Right.
But so he was sort of like me in Death Proof. He's actually cast as a musician, and that's, you know, what he really does. But so young people that are finding their way, it's like a really encouraging movie, but it's also really funny and it's clever, and I got a kick out of it. And the guy that I was dating at the time, I took, and he's kind of, you know, he's tatted and he surfs and he skates and he's a little bit, you know, and he walked in expecting to be kind of, I'm seeing this because, you know, I'm supporting Zoe, and he walked out and he was like, I really like that movie. I was like, score! So I think it covers the board.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Drink Moxie would like to ask
Moxie?
or comment. Yeah. Have you ever refused to do a stunt or work on a project because you didn't trust the person in charge? And what's his name?
Yeah. I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. No, once I'm on set, I've yet to come across something that I've said outright no to. I hope if ever that situation arises that I will have the kahunas to say no if necessary. Usually there's ways around it. It's a little bit like, I don't feel comfortable doing it this way, my strengths are this, can we move it a little bit to the left, or can I change this kick to that kick, or can I switch it? You know, like, there's always ways of maneuvering it. Things on set always shift anyway, but in terms of projects, yeah, there's been the odd project that I wouldn't tell them that's why I'm not doing it. You know, I'm just unavailable or whatever, but there have been moments, you know, where I might definitely choose something over something else for that, you know. But most of the time, I think, you know, as a good, responsible stunt person or performer, a lot of it's my responsibility or our responsibility to be safe in the situation. Like, I can't just walk into a situation and be like, my safety is your responsibility, end of story, I'm letting it all go, because, you know, it's sort of like a pedestrian walking out into traffic and being hit by a car and being like, well, it's your fault. It's like, well, you're still the one who can't walk. It's irrelevant of whose fault it is, you still can't walk. So, you know, so I would like to think that most of the time I'm smart enough to be able to work it out on set with the people that know what they're doing as well. But
it gets back to, you're not good to anyone if your body is broken.
Yeah.
Right? Comes back to that, right?
Absolutely. You're not good to anyone
them,
broken.
yourself, that kind of thing. Well, now, as you are doing more acting, how does it work where you might get a job as a lead and you can do the stunts, But if something happens to Zoe the stunt double, Zoe the actress is also out of commission.
Right.
Are they wanting you to do less stunts, or they're having a double just in case?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting sort of ego battle for me a little bit, but also I want to do the work because I love the stunt work, you know. But, you know, even on Death Proof, we had some. I didn't find out about it until closer to the end, but insurance companies, that's often where it comes down to, because the insurance companies are the ones literally that are going to pay if the lead is out of commission. And, you know, producers and the money people obviously are affected by that possibility as well. Death Proof, I didn't have a stunt double. Angel of Death, I had a stunt double standing by. And, you know, I had a conversation with her. I was like, listen, I would rather you be here and making money and getting a paycheck, and, you know, and please don't take this the wrong way, but I'm really probably not going to let you do anything. So just, you have to look at this like it's just a cream job. You just turn up, eat the red vines,
right,
get a paycheck, and go home, you know what I mean? And she was totally cool with it. But yeah, that is something that'll be a constant battle a little bit, I think. But, you know, I mean, you know, there are high-class problems. There's worse things to have be problematic, you know.
Wow, someone out there in Stream.tv land wants to know, why did you like the name Drink Moxie so much? Why did it make you laugh?
Oh, I'm just loving these names because they're sort of a little bit like derby names. Like, you can just come up with whatever you want.
Right.
Like, Drink Moxie, I don't even know what that means. That sounds like a poison? Right. What is Moxie?
Well,
What's Moxie?
The Whip It website has a way for you to make your own derby name. I'm Dulce Thighs, by the way, in case anyone's interested.
Dulce Thighs. Awesome. But
go to the Whip It site for that. Now, I want to ask you, because we're talking about actors and stunt people, if you could, can you put stunts into 3 categories for me? 3 being a dangerous stunt. What would be an example of a dangerous stunt that an actor should never do? 2 being a middle-level stunt that maybe they could, depending on their martial arts or whatever their experience is. 1 is something that they would be a wimp not to do. Can you think of an example of each kind, and that you've seen them not do?
Right, yeah. Well, the dangerous one, like
a stunt they should never do.
Yeah, well, an example, you know, and it's hard for me because now I'm an actor as well. Right. And when I say should never, unless you're a trained professional like me, because I would want to do it still. But you know, for example, the high fall on Catwoman. If something goes wrong, that's not just a black eye that needs to be covered up by makeup. That's like potentially a loss of the lead. You know, at risk of sounding melodramatic, it's not like, you know, I really didn't have any fears that I was actually going to die, but things could go seriously wrong. And on top of that, that's not something where you can see her face. You know, there's no fear of seeing it be not Sharon Stone or not, you know. So there's no point in risking her there, you know. Something like Death Proof, for example, if I was the stunt double and not the actor, or if I was the actor and not the stunt double, there would be definitely scenes where you would need the actor to get in there and do some of it. So you've got a face to cut to and from, and, you know, as long as you've got the appropriate safety equipment and, you know, you've rehearsed it a bunch of times with the stunt people, then that's something that would be appropriate and kind of, I think, necessary. Like, there are definitely times when I'm like, dude, we need the actor to do some stuff. Even though I want to do it all, if I'm doubling, there's times when I'm like, we need the actor in there to sell it. Because we're all about making the movie look awesome and the action look awesome, you know. I
think Quentin has said, with the sophistication of audiences, the days of stunt doubles doing everything are over.
Yeah.
Because people catch it now.
Yeah, they're looking for, they don't just catch it, they're looking for it. Right. They're looking for the dude with the hairy legs and the wig. They're like, wait a minute, I've heard about that, you know. Right. So they're looking for it, you know. And then I guess an example of the last one would be in my experience. And I feel terrible because of no one in New Zealand, or maybe. There was a TV show that I worked on once and I doubled. I was literally brought in to trip over a vacuum cleaner, and it was, yeah, I know, and it wasn't even sort of like I'm running and I eat it, you know, I was like literally walking out of the kitchen and trip and fall onto my hands and knees, and, you know, there was a mat down, and I was like, at one point I was like, really, like, no offense, but wouldn't you feel better doing it yourself? You know what I mean? Like, I'm happy to do it, but, you know. So I walked home with a paycheck for tripping over a vacuum cleaner. I just thought that was pretty awesome. Awesome. Yeah. De-Evolution would like to ask, how much roller derby training did you do before filming Whip It? Bloody Holly is a great derby name. Thank you very much. I would like to say I came up with Bloody Holly myself, but it was already in the script. But I had fun with it. We got to design our own tattoos, and I had, of course, it's under all my guards, so you never got to see it. But I had Buddy Holly's like birth date and death date, and it was all very fun. But the roller derby, we had, I can't remember how many weeks of training we all had as a team with all the actors, and people came and went whenever they had availability. I started training a little bit earlier because I knew I wanted this role, and I kind of knew that part of the selling of me would be that I'm capable, physically capable of doing the skating. So I went along to train with the Derby Dolls, the LA Derby Dolls, just randomly. I'm like, hi, my name's blah, blah, and heaps of them already knew who I was.
So the LA Derby Dolls, that's an actual derby?
Yeah, and they train in downtown LA, and they've got the big rink, and they're awesome. So I would go along to fresh meat trainings. I think it's on Tuesdays. That's what they call them. I was fresh meat.
Right,
I was like, oh my God, I'm terrified already. The fact you're calling me fresh meat. And that was the first training session I had. So I went along to those for a couple of weeks before the official training even started, because I was like, I got to be on my game, literally, you know.
So were there like any people like, hey, let's see how tough that Xena stunt double is now?
Yeah, right.
She's
Like,
in
just
our
out
rank.
just because they need to.
Yeah.
Like, you know what's funny? Mostly I only get that attitude from drunk guys in bars. These girls were the opposite. They were like, dude, it's so cool you're here. What can you blah, blah, blah. You know, it was just instant camaraderie. It was really cool.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Kumar the Far. Are stunt people in SAG? How does that work if they are acting too? Do you get a double paycheck?
Well, that's all negotiable.
All right.
Yes, we are SAG and AFTRA as well, but yeah, the SAG is our union. So it works out well for me as an actor. I'm just covered under the same flag. There is like a stunt department of SAG, and in terms of the double paycheck, usually not, because it's not officially that I'm doing this role and that role, but you know, you can negotiate to get a better day rate based on the fact that you're saving them this or that, or the fact that, you know, once you start building a bit of a name for yourself, then you're negotiating your own price anyway. And so yeah, and you know, and if I am going to have a stunt double on principle, then, you know, I want a stunt girl out there to be getting a paycheck, you know what I mean? So I don't want to be taking that. Like, if it's going to get out of my pay for her, then it's, you know, I mean, if you look at it as black and white as that, it gets a bit weird. So basically, It's like you get your paycheck and I'll negotiate mine separately.
Right,
you know?
right, absolutely. Yeah. Kono Santik would like to ask or comment. You recently stunt coordinated on Bitch Slap, and if I'm not mistaken, this was your first coordination gig. Oh, I know the answer, but I'm not going to tell. What did you learn from being in charge rather than just hitting your marks as a double?
I mean, it was my first feature as a coordinator. I also was coordinating on Reflections with Adrian and a bunch of other people. It was very different for me. It was a whole new challenge, which I mean, I was, you know, when I first took it on, I was like, I'm so instruction taker girl. I'm so like, you tell me what to do and where to be and how to do it, and I'll knock it out of the park. That's my job. That's what I'm here to do.
And then the stunt coordinator is like the director of the stunt people of the action.
Yeah,
right?
he's the head of. He or she is the head of the. I know. Wow, Zoe, bad. He or she is the head of the stunt department, and often will be the choreographer as well, depending on the budget. You know, big budgets, you just delegate to loads of different people and have a big team, but. So in this instance, she, being myself, was to choreograph everything as well. And, you know, I'm often a part of making stuff up on set, but it's usually like, well, that's not working, or we haven't got time for this, how about if we do this, or there's now a tree in the way, how do we incorporate that, or, you know, it's sort of on the spur of the moment stuff. So for me to choreograph these fights, by the way, that are scripted as the baddest, longest bitch fight in history, I'm like, holy crap, that's, you know, okay, wow. So it was a lot for me, and to figure out how to choreograph all of that and then teach it to the girls and have them, you know, it was like a whole different thing that I just never looked at it from that side before. I'd never been responsible. I'd really never been responsible except for my safety and the person that I'm opposite. And I really enjoyed it, and I really enjoyed, once I'd done all the hard work and the preparation, I really enjoyed watching it come to fruition on set and watching the girls do the fights. And, you know, and often I was doubling just about everybody, so I was like, did it, and then would go behind the monitor and have a look, and then run back, and you know. But then seeing the finished product is like, it's really satisfying.
And you took charge. You had rehearsals at your house, and you guys all bonded and worked together, and all that kind of fun stuff.
I found myself being like, you know, and I've done a lot of training actresses, because as the stunt double, that's often what happens. The stunt coordinator will have me and the actor that I'm fighting, or the actor that I'm doubling. and I'm always a part of that process. But to take charge and actually be like, I need you to be here at this time. We're going to train till this time. Yes, you can do this. No, we need you to be on time. This is, I want you to do 20 of these. I was like, this is, and I took to it, and it wasn't like I didn't feel the need to be a taskmaster about it. It was
Well, I was going to ask you, because you have an excellent reputation in the field, Taurus Awards, all that kind of stuff. Do you find yourself having expecting of the people you're working with in the capacity as a coordinator that, you obviously hold yourself to a very high standard and work yourself very hard? You know what I'm saying?
Wait, do I have expectations of...
In other words, were you holding the girls you were training to the Zoe Bell standard?
I see what you're saying.
Because
yeah, I was.
You're very hard on yourself, I'm imagining.
Yes, I wasn't hard on the girls like I'm hard on myself. Like, we very seldom treat other people the way we treat ourselves, but I did. I expected really amazing things from them, because I figure, because, for years as a stunt woman, you see actors that come in and they're like, oh, I've done this and I've done this, and they get in there and you're like, how are you worrying about breaking it out? Like, you're on Xena. What did you... I had one girl say to me one time, she was like, I never knew I was going to be doing action. I have to talk to my agent. I was like, I'm sorry, what show did you think you were on? Like, how did you get this far and think that Xena was like a romantic comedy? Like, what are you talking about? But these girls were all... I held them to the expectation that they offered me, which was they all came to me and they were like, we want to be good. We want this to look authentic. We want to work as hard as you need us to. So I held them to that, and I respected that they came to me with that, and I respected it by holding them to it, and it was awesome. Just watching them improve was like, even that was satisfying. It's sort of like the grasshopper and the master situation. I was like, go grasshoppers. It was awesome.
That's great. That's fantastic. Now,
yeah.
I know you've never directed, but would you intuit or maybe think that the transition from stunt double to stunt coordinator might be similar to actor to director?
Yeah, I think it's very similar. You're the performer to, like, you're sort of like the puppet and the puppet master. Not that actors are puppets or whatever, but, you're the performer and the guider. And I think those two relationships are very similar. Yeah, I do think there's a really similar. Who knows? Maybe I end up being an actor and then I go into directing.
Now, I think we got off on a little bit of a tangent. Just to wrap it up, someone was asking about the coordinator, the double, and the acting. It's the available work. You love all three.
Yeah, I mean, the bitch slap thing kind of came out of left field a little bit. I'd considered coordinating, but I'd never really taken any steps to make it happen. And then Death Proof came up, and this acting thing was like, wow, that seems like the next natural progression. And then Eric Grundeman approached me about doing Bitch Slap, and these are all guys that I worked with on Xena as one of the executive producers, and Rick, who was directed heaps of Xena episodes, so I'd worked with all of these people before. Lucy and Renee are in it. I mean, it's just, Michael Hurst is just a godsend in it. But, and their sell to me was, we want a bunch of friends that love making movies to come together and have a really fantastic time and make something cool, and we want you to be a part of it. And I was like, sold.
Right.
I would love to, and then I realized that I was taking on something really scary. I was like, oh geez, what am I? And it wasn't until we were shooting that I was like, I really like this, and this is like, and so now as I'm sitting here and you're asking me, I'm like, technically I have got, I would say two careers. Like the career as stunt double alone, I feel like I've come to the natural end of that. Like, it's not that I'm quitting or retiring as such, but I feel like that's segueing, and it's segueing into both of those. Like, being a stunt double segues really naturally into coordinating, and also segues really naturally for me at the moment into acting. And I don't know if those two can be done at the same time, but I figure out if I can do them both, I may as well until I can't,
Well, I'm going to get to another IM, but I have a feeling if we tied you down, we couldn't keep you from doing more stunts.
Yeah, no, exactly. Either way, it's going to happen.
It's going to happen. Cupcheck would like to ask, Zoe, I love your accent. Have you been offered any voiceover work, and would you love to do some in the future?
Yes, I did a thing called The Chronicles of Nerm, which is... meant to come out this year.
The Chronicles of Norm?
Nerm,
okay.
N-E-R-M.
Okay.
Yeah, that's not just my accent right there. I'm sorry, are you trying to say Norm? And that's cool. But I've signed with a voiceover agent that I'm really excited about, and I would love to do some voiceover stuff. And it's been really interesting to me that, I had a really husky voice when I was young, like quite deep. And then it seemed to just become less deep, and I don't know, I guess my balls dropped or whatever happened. Although that's the other way around normally, isn't it? But But it's been really interesting to me how distinct my voice apparently is. Like, there'd be people in restaurants or whatever that, and I'll be sitting within eye line of them, and it's not until I start talking to my friends or whatever that people be then, I thought I recognized your voice. You're Zoe, and I'm like, really? Recognize my voice? You know, so apparently it's sort of distinct, and if I can do something, I mean, I love to talk. Clearly, it's not a problem for me talking. I like it, so I would love to do some stuff like that.
Now, one question that we'd like to get people out of here on is, do you have a favorite set term speak? So, like, for example, back to one or checking the gate or something like that.
Interesting. Well, you know, it was bizarre for me because when I came here, and now I find trouble remembering what the New Zealand ones were, but you know, the New Zealand calls are all a bit different to, you know, final checks as in, see, what is it?
Last looks.
Last looks, that's America, so final checks is, but one that just comes to my mind because it's Quentin and you can't help it is, you know, whenever he has anything, there's always someone who's like, why? And the answer is, and everyone will join in because we love making movies. Like, it's become a catchphrase to the point where I find myself saying it at times that's not appropriate because other people don't know what I'm talking about. They're like, really? It's good. You love making movies. That's
nice.
Awesome.
Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, I'm like, but it's a, oh, never mind. Yeah.
Now, I'm going to count that one as your acting one. Do you happen to have one as a stunt specific one?
Oh, yeah.
Is there stunt lingo or jargon?
Well, actually, I guess the one, see, now I've got heaps of them coming to mind. Another one, just as an actor very quickly, because you do not get it as a stunt person, is Zoe would like to invite you to see it. I'm like, you know, it's funny because invite implies that I don't have to RSVP, which is not entirely true. As a stunt person, there's no invitation. But one of my favorites, and for whatever reason it just became mine, well, I say it a lot, is just set here. Like, whenever I'm reading set here, like we would always say, like, stunts are set.
Okay.
Or camera set or whatever, and I would always, I'm like, set here, like as long as I was on ones, I'm set here. Like, and I am a little bit of a pain in the ass because I would intentionally say it whenever it was clear that someone else wasn't set. I'd be like, Paul, I'm set. I'm ready. Stunts are set. Set here. Yeah, I'm set here. Oh, I'm sorry. Are we waiting on makeup? Oh, I'm sorry. Set here. Oh, we're waiting on grip. Like, it was just, and I was just doing taking the piss. But I do definitely find myself saying, I even say it in my normal life. I'm like, yep, sit here. Oh, I'm sorry. That doesn't make any sense to you. But I like it.
And I love making movies, right?
Yeah, and I love making movies. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, it has been a big pleasure meeting and interviewing you.
Well,
so much fun.
It's been a pleasure being here. Yeah, is it over already?
We've been on an hour already.
I told you I'm good at talking.
You are excellent at talking. It's one of your many, like Xena, you have many skills, right?
Multifaceted.
Multifaceted. Well, I want to do a quick wrap up here. We have Whip It coming out in theaters October 2nd. We have a website for that, www.whipit-it.net. That's whip-it.net. Go find out what your roller derby name is. Double Dare is an incredible documentary featuring Zoe Bell, also Death Proof, Inglourious Basterds she did stunts in. We didn't get to that. And another movie that she acted in, Gamer, I think is still in theaters as well. So again, I want to thank Zoe Bell for coming in tonight. It was an absolute pleasure meeting and talking to you. And I will see you next time on Filmnut.